Shalom, welcome to Challenging Torah, a project of the Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue. Our portion this week is a big challenge. It's Naso. Last week in Bamidbar, we talked about having a census at the very beginning of all of those males between 20 and 50 who could serve in the army. Now we are counting the Levites because they don't serve in military service, but each one has a job. So we begin by counting the Gershonites. Who's in? This is a Torah portion of who's in and who's out. Who's out? In the very next paragraph. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, instruct the Israelites to remove from the camp anyone with an eruption or a discharge or defiled by a corpse, remove male and female alike, so that they do not defile the camp in whose midst I dwell. There's terrible fear of impurity, and that in that moment of impurity, God will not be with them. That's who's out. Some separation is voluntary. The Nazir, and the root Nazir, a Nun, a Zayin, and a Resh, means to set apart. The Nazirite takes a vow on his or her self not to cut his hair, not to touch wine or even grapes, and clearly not to come anywhere near the dead. But it is a voluntary, temporary situation at the end of which the Nazir goes and brings an offering to the temple. But the Nazir is out. The one with a discharge is out. And most of all, as usual, women are out, right? No one counts the women. We never have a count of, quote, the women and children. But even in marital relations, there is a sense of unbalance and a power differential that will continue to not only exist but expand throughout the Middle Ages. This is the portion of Sotah, the adulterous woman. And it states that when a woman is suspected of adultery, she must undergo an ordeal of exclusion. She's out from the community. A separation from life with her husband and the community. She must undergo a metaphysical trial. Only God can know if she's guilty or not. If there are witnesses, she's immediately stoned to death. When a husband who has a wife who has gone astray, or a spirit of jealousy has come over him, we don't know if she's guilty or not, then he's to take her immediately to the priest, and the priest performs a ritual. First, an offering of without oil, but without frankincense or all the things that make a beautiful smell. It's just barley. And then she's stood, and in some cases stripped to the waist. She's given a potion that contains the name of God, dissolved so that the ink is dissolved in the water, and she drinks it. And if her belly swells and her thigh is distended, she's guilty, and she becomes a pariah. She is excluded. She is sent out of the camp. It's the greatest punishment they can come up with, to be put out, not to be counted. And if she's innocent, well, these things won't happen and she'll become fertile, which assumes she's going to sleep with him again. I've always wondered about that after you've gone through this ordeal. But only through an ordeal, a trial, by a metaphysical outcome, the ordeal is what will make this decision. Ordeal, we understand ordeal. This was a week where all of us underwent a great ordeal. As we watched the happenings in Orlando, a massacre of 49 or 50 innocent people in a gay bar, we understood what it means to be a member of a community that is often, and has been up until this moment, excluded from the whole. They've become the outside pariah. This is such a difficult moment in America as we worry about bathrooms, as we worry about marriages, as we look at rectifying what has been a 3,000-year attitude that now is starting to change. Just as only in the last 50 years have there been women who are offering service in the temple as rabbis. I was very touched by something that I read in a Keshet magazine by a young 20-something, clearly gay young man whose name is Darian Lipman. And he compares the GLBTQ to a Nazarite. And unlike those who've been chosen, who have chosen themselves to be set apart, he says, we didn't, most of us, choose to be gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, but we're instead given this gift by God. The Nazarite's vow is always temporary, and ours is not. We cannot shave our heads and return to life as usual, because our lives as usual are what set us apart in the first place. We've come to understand that, and the ordeal was not just an ordeal for those in that nightclub, but an ordeal and a judgment for and upon all of us. We are living in very tumultuous times, and so we ask, at the end of this portion, we're given such a blessing of peace. How do we come to terms with all of these changes in our society and the exclusions that are now to become inclusions, as we realize that the blemished priest, those who have special needs, the person who looks different, the person who has a skin problem, the person who is a woman, to say nothing of a person who has chosen a different sexual orientation, is a part of this humanity and a part of our community that we call the Jewish community. And so God says to Aaron, bless the Israelites as following at the end of this portion. May the Lord bless and protect you. We're asking for protection in this very, very troubling time. May God's light shine upon you and God's face smile at you. And may God turn and look and smile at each one of you, for everyone counts, and bring you to a place of inner peace. Shabbat Shalom.